here in the booth for Voiceover Livecast number 12. And as always, we will wait for people to get here before starting the really exciting stuff. Kicking this off a couple minutes early just to... Hey, Alicia Dietrich, you are number one. How about that? Is that a first? Probably not. Hi, David. Hey, Ted. I think Charlene and Lori and Richard are usually kind of competing for number one. So, Alicia, you got there. Hi, Stacy. What's up? Just in the booth. This is a voiceover day. I'm not going out playing any open mics. I'm not hosting. I'm not doing anything. You've always been number one. Yeah, that's true. Hi, Christine. We're just going to wait until some people filter in here. And I'll give you some updates and let you know what I'm doing today. Just doing some regular narration. And Michele Pollock Dalton has just arrived, which is a good thing, because this whole session revolves around her. The author of the Out of Africa series that I've been working on. Let's give it another minute. Be patient. It'll happen. I'm still trying to figure out the best place to put the camera and everything. And I've got the light on this time, and it tends to wash me out a little bit, but it's better than the dark. Hi, Tim. Hey there, Chuck. Alright. That's enough. People can watch it later, and people will be streaming in and out, I'm sure. So, voiceover updates in general. Doing a couple odd jobs here and there, but still mostly the work is audiobooks. I know this is blocking my face a little bit. Try to make that better. But right now, I'm working on book 3 of the Out of Africa series. Out of Desperation, this one is called. Let's see, I'm about a little more than halfway done with the narration, and have quite a bit of editing and proofing to do. Last night, hosted open mic with Lori English. Hey, Sabrina. All right. Hi, Charlene. And Charlene was there at open mic with me and Lori at the Barr, Buckeye Lake. Pretty fun time. Hope everyone enjoyed themselves. And kind of wore me out for whatever reason. I did have to play kind of the last hour. So we didn't have all that many musicians, but that's okay. Hi, Paula. So, as a result, this is not a narrating day for me. My voice is a little bit rough, which helps the low end, and if I had to perform today, that low end would help with all the Johnny Cash and Doors and stuff like that. But for narration, especially with this series, there are more female characters than male, and I can kind of get away with a little bit of Catherine's dialogue, and you'll hear it here because I'm going to be narrating a portion of book 2. But when there's real emotion and they're raising their voices or anything like that, what I've got today would not work. Hey, Richard. Sabrina, that's good news. Let me know well in advance so we can try to plan when you can come out and see me or whatever. Okay. So yeah, it's an editing day, which is all right, because that's all part of it. So today I'm going to be narrating a little portion of book 2 of the Out of Africa series. The book is called Out of Time. Michele Pollock Dalton is the author, and she's here watching. We're going to give away some codes. If any of you are interested, just pipe up, let me know. We'll get you started with book 1, which is Out of the Ashes, and this is a kind of a romance series that's kind of based in religion as well, set in California in the 1970s. It's very unique. and I've been enjoying it a lot. And I'm, like I said, currently working on book 3, and there are many other books and other side projects that go along with that. Little vignettes that tie into the story. Hi, John. All right. So I'm going to start. Where is this? Kind of the middle of chapter 4. I don't know why. I just feel like it. And again, this book is out now. This is book 2. Book 1 is also out there, of course. So if you would like a code, let us know. Free code for a free audiobook, if I didn't specify that. So this series revolves around John and Catherine. And they have become love interests. They have met and quickly fallen in love. There's a lot of drama with Catherine's health and other stuff. Hi, Jesse. All right. Friday, October 22nd, 1976. Tell me about your family, Catherine said as soon as they were on their way the next morning. What do you want to know? Anything. Everything, she answered with a smile. Well, no one has seen or heard anything from my father in over 15 years. He left with the rodeo and never came back. For the past 20 years, my mom has worked as a housekeeper on a horse ranch. It's over on the east side of the state, past Sacramento. She's got a good thing going there. The old guy that owns the place has been a widower since the early 50s. Rumor around the bunkhouse is that Sandy and Seuss belong to him instead of my dad. I can't tell. They both look like Mom. Seuss? Yeah. Her given name is Susanna. She started out as Susie, but she loves that Cat in the Hat book by Dr. Seuss. From memory, John quoted, "The sun did not shine. It was too wet to play. So we sat in the house all that cold, cold, wet day. I sat there with Sally. We sat there, we two. And I said, how I wish we had something to do." You still remember? Catherine asked with a bemused expression on her face. I will never, as long as I live, forget the Cat in the Hat, John replied with a lopsided grin. I must have read that story to Seuss 10 times a night when she was little. How old is she? She'll be 16 at Christmas, and she's as wild as they come. Briggs has spoiled her rotten. Who is Briggs? Bartholomew Briggs, Jr., the guy who owns the ranch. The way I figure it, Sandy could go either way, belong to either my dad or Briggs. But there's no doubt in my mind who fathered Seuss, John finished with a perturbed sigh. With a touch on his knee, Catherine asked, That bothers you? John nodded and stared glumly out at the road ahead. Sleeping around seems to be our family curse. I'm sorry for being nosy, love, Catherine said tenderly. Agitated, John answered, You got a right to know what kind of mess you're marrying into. Tracing comforting circles on the inside of his knee, Catherine let him brood for a while. She knew he was ready to be social again when he took her hand and moved it up his leg. Courageously, she continued drawing the same light circles on his inner thigh. Baby, we still have a long way to go before we get to Vacaville, he advised, stilling her tender ministrations. With a pixie grin, she answered, I know. Just trying to take your mind off your troubles. Sweetheart, in about 30 seconds, we're going to have more trouble than we know what to do with if you don't put your hand back in your lap, John chided cheerfully. Then, with a wicked wink in her direction, he slid his hand onto her thigh and began drawing the same pattern up and down the inside of her leg. Uncle, she cried when his hand traveled too close to her core. Shoving his hand back across the seat, she exclaimed, You keep your hands over there, and I'll keep my hands over here. With a sultry smile and a husky laugh, he promised, Only until we get to Vacaville. The small, run-down farmhouse was not what Catherine had expected when she envisioned Maggie's childhood home. Instead, she had pictured something like her parents' tiny homestead, with the red barn and white turn-of-the-century farmhouse. The muddy yard and shabby outbuildings of the Baker farm were a dreadful contrast to her family's well-ordered setup. Junk cars and machinery, with large weeds growing up through and around them, were scattered around the perimeter of the outbuildings. John's dismayed expression matched her own. "What is Maggie thinking?" John mumbled under his breath. "I don't think she has a choice. Jay's benefits are not enough for them to live in Los Angeles." John set the brake as they pulled to a stop in front of the house. Mrs. Baker was looming in the doorway. "We were expecting you yesterday," the woman called critically. "You can just leave the trailer there. The men will take care of it when they come in out of the fields." John went around the truck and helped Catherine down before unhitching the trailer. "How are the girls?" Catherine asked as she approached the doorway. From inside, she could hear Rosie's pathetic cries. "They'll be just fine with a good dose of discipline," Dorothea Baker answered gravely. "Are you the one they call Cat?" "Yes, ma'am. Could we visit with them for a while before we go?" "No, I don't think so," the woman replied in a huff. "You'll get them all riled up again. Just leave the trailer and be on your way," she said before firmly closing the door. Catherine tried to blink the tears out of her eyes before returning to John, but he had caught most of the conversation. The dejected look on Catherine's face mirrored his own. "Try not to worry, sweetheart. Maggie will be here in the next day or two, and things will be better then." "I hope so," she forlornly answered as John helped her back into the Rover. "We can be in Sonoma for a late lunch if you're up to another hour in the car." Catching his face in her hands, she smiled softly. "Let's go get married." "Hi, Bob." "Hey, Sid, how you doing?" So, as always, even though I've got the whole microphone set up, I'm not actually recording. So when I make a mistake, I just kind of go over it until I get it right. Chapter 5. "Hurry with the camera, Lloyd! They're here!" Mavis gleefully shouted. When Mavis and Lloyd burst through the double oak doors at the front of the majestic Victorian house, John and Catherine couldn't help but chuckle. The older couple had the pulsating vibrancy of children on Christmas morning. "My goodness, aren't you just lovely?" Mavis declared, scurrying forward and catching Catherine in a motherly hug. "Such beautiful hair! What curls! I simply must call the hairdresser and tell her to stop by, so we can decide how you'll wear your hair." "Easy," John admonished. "Remember, I told you she has a couple of cracked ribs." "Oh, I know. You poor dear. What a horrible thing to happen right before your big day. But don't you worry. I have the dresses all prepared, and we'll find just the right one for you." Swiveling her head to and fro, she searched for her husband. "Lloyd! Lloyd!" she called. "Oh, where is that man?" "Right here, dear," he answered, rounding the front of the Rover with John in tow. "I'll take him down to the haberdashery just as soon as we get the suitcases hauled upstairs." "Now you just leave those here," Mavis demanded of John. With an exaggerated wink, she continued, "We don't want to upset that shoulder of yours. A groom must be in tip-top shape to meet all the physical demands of his wedding day." Lloyd waved frantically to a teenage boy in the side yard. "Troy, come help me carry these. They go in the bridal suite." "Okay, everyone," Mavis directed. "Let's get some photos on the porch before we go our separate appointments." Turning in a circle like a whirlwind, she gathered everyone together and rushed them towards the wide steps leading up to the covered porch. Posing John and Catherine at the base of the steps, she instructed, "You two stand here and... Oh my, what did I do with those flowers? Lloyd! Lloyd! Where did that man go?" "Right here, dear," he said, holding up the camera with one hand and the bouquet of delicate African violets in the other. "Lovely, just lovely," Mavis declared. "The violets look enchanting against the deep rose color of that blouse. John, get closer. This is your bride. Don't be shy." John pulled Catherine close and kissed her gently. "This should be close enough, don't you think?" he whispered in Catherine's ear. With a tender smile, she laid her head against John's chest and waited until Lloyd had blinded them both with the constant flash of the camera. Mavis laid a hand to her mouth and declared, "Splendid! Just splendid! Oh, what a handsome couple you make!" Waving a hand in front of her eyes to dissipate the tears, Mavis switched back to drill sergeant mode. "Now then," she decreed with a clap of her hands, "we must get busy with our preparations. Lloyd will take John to the fitting for his suit. And a haircut. Don't forget the haircut. The seamstress will be arriving in less than 90 minutes to make alterations to whichever dress you choose. And I simply must call the hairdresser. Dinner is at 5 p.m. in the dining room. Don't be late. You'll be meeting with Reverend Thomas to discuss the ceremony." Everyone blinked when Mavis stopped for a breath. Clapping her hands again, she commanded in good humor, "Well, on with you. We're behind schedule as it is." John called over his shoulder to Mavis as Lloyd was rushing him to the car. "Feed her." "Well, dear, let's get you upstairs," Mavis called as she went bounding into the house and up the grand staircase to the landing. "Come along now. Quickly," she called, gesturing to Catherine. "There are 3 gowns that I think will suit you. The first is from 1890, made with the finest Irish lace. It's simply breathtaking. But I can see you're a little taller than I remembered, so it will take some adjusting." Catherine paused on the landing next to her hostess, a little out of breath from climbing the stairs. It was hard to get a deep breath with her ribs wrapped so tightly. "Oh, sweet child, just sit here for a minute until you catch your breath," Mrs. Phillips commanded, directing her to the window seat underneath the arched stained glass window. "The second dress is from right around the turn of the century. It's a beautiful dress with fine crystal beadwork and a cathedral-length train that will look simply outstanding if we pose you under this window. The train will fall splendidly down the staircase so the photographer can get a full-length shot." "Mrs. Phillips," Catherine interrupted. "Call me Mavis, dear. We're bound to be good friends," the mature woman said with an endearing smile. "Now, the third dress is not quite so grand, but it is enchanting nonetheless. Crafted from the finest silk and lace. I think it was meant to be a morning dress because the beading is not quite as elaborate as the other wedding dresses. But it was made for a tall woman, so there shouldn't be as much tailoring needed to make it work for you. Are you ready to go on? The bridal suite is on the 3rd floor." Catherine nodded gamely and followed the energetic woman to the 2nd-floor landing, where she stopped again and sat on a stunning settee covered in a rose-colored damask that replicated the pattern in the burgundy wallpaper lining the hallway. "Your home is beautiful," she proclaimed, admiring the finely refinished woodwork and flooring. "Oh, what a mess it was when we found it," Mavis uttered, aghast at the memory. "It was being used for a boarding house. The beautiful virgin oak woodwork was painted horrific colors, and the walls were covered in that horrendous-looking paneling they slap up all over the place now. I cannot even begin to describe the smell of the place. Oh, what a despicable use of such a grand home. Lloyd and I have worked on it for 5 years, and we're so happy with the results. You are our first guest, you know." "Thank you so much for sharing your home with us," Catherine said delightedly. "You're very generous to allow us to stay for the weekend, and I can't thank you enough for all the work you've put into planning our wedding. I had no idea where to start." "Dear girl, it's been my greatest pleasure. Lloyd and I were unable to have children. Your wedding has given me a chance to take part in your very special day," Mavis answered appreciatively. "Are you ready to choose your dress?" All of the dresses you described sound lovely, but could you do me a favor? Of course, Mavis gushed. Would you choose the most affordable and put the others away? I don't want to fall in love with one of the dresses only to find it's out of my reach. Now, none of that, Mavis declared firmly. Lloyd and I have spoken about this. We know your budget, and we want you children to have the best we can offer, despite the financial constraints. Perhaps, in return, you'll allow us to use your photo in our antique store near the vintage clothing, so others can see how remarkable this fine clothing can look on a modern woman. Stunned, Catherine could only nod her head. Let's pick out a dress, Mavis happily chirped as she took Catherine's hand and led her to the third floor. Doubly out of breath by the time they reached the third floor, Catherine could only stare in shocked amazement at the luxurious bridal suite. Flooded with light from the large bay window in the front and the back, the suite encompassed the entire third floor. The tower and a large area allocated for a sitting room comprised the entry to the suite. The massive, ornate furniture had been lovingly restored and reupholstered in shades of navy and dove gray. A pair of wide French doors led out to the bedroom, which was dominated by an exquisite canopy bed dressed out in deep maroon curtains and linens. An elegant fainting couch covered in ivory velvet occupied the curve of the bay window. Do you like it? Mavis questioned anxiously. Oh, Mavis, it's absolutely extraordinary, Catherine enthused. This is the most beautifully appointed room that I've ever seen. Come through here, Mavis said, directing her beyond another set of French doors into the dressing room. The three magnificent wedding gowns hung on dress forms near a full-length mirror, and a fine silk chemise was laid out with a vintage dressing robe in preparation for the bride-to-be. Well, what do you think? Mavis asked, pointing to the dresses. With wide eyes, Catherine circled each of the dress forms in astonishment. Mavis, I can't afford any of these, even if you discount them. Now, dear, we'll have none of that. Whatever you choose will be a well-placed investment for us. When people see you in one of these dresses, our vintage clothing will simply fly out of the store. In fact, I should probably have you model a good many more, Mavis answered with an inspired smile. Model? Catherine gasped. I'm not a model. Oh, but you should be. At least for these, Mavis answered in delight. You are built just right for these styles, and you carry yourself well. In fact, I'll speak to Lloyd about it. We'll put together a float for the Thanksgiving Day parade, and you will be our model. That's the end of the chapter. Oh, I got some new people in here. I don't know if I can scroll up or not. Wow, all right. Hey, there's Sean, Kathy, Rob Rock, Vicky, Ryan Miller. Your buddy was out at Cardo's on Saturday. Had a lot of fun out there. Pickerington, Kaylee, Harley Taylor, Dina, Don Miller, and Michael Walker. All right. Let's see, what time is it? I might do a little bit more, but you can probably tell, especially with the female dialogue. And again, if you didn't hear me talk about it before, I just don't have a good narrating voice today. It's just kind of worn out, and so today is an editing day. So when I'm trying to do that dialogue, especially with the females and enthusiastic, like when Catherine says, "Model?" Catherine gasped. "I'm not a model." I can't keep it there without squeaking, so that's no good. And I pretty much know I can try to warm it up and do my little exercises and stuff, but some days you just know when it's not going to happen, and this is one of those days. Hi, Kimberly. So, again, this is, I'm reading from Book 2, which is Out of Time, from the Out of Africa series, written by Michele Pollock Dalton. We have free codes for this, so if you're into audiobooks at all, let us know. You can start with Book 1 and see how you like it. I'm currently working on Book 3, about halfway through that. This is one of those series where there are more female voices than male. And I do the female voices just fine, but when my voice is all kind of rough like this, it'd be better suited for, I don't know, the sci-fi, the thrillers that I sometimes do. But a lot of these, for the rest of the year, actually, except for one book, it's going to be romance, the lovey-dovey stuff. Hi, Don Carey, saxophone player extraordinaire. We missed you Monday. Let me skip ahead here and just find something. Okay, here's just some general kind of narration. Keep me away from the ladies' voices as much as I can. Chapter 11. John turned her carefully in his lap so she could sit in the V of his legs. Pulling the t-shirt over her head, he haphazardly draped it over the edge of the tub and mumbled, All clothing is banned in bathing facilities from here on out. Settling her back against his chest, he nudged her head to the side and trailed kisses across her collarbone. His hands trailed around her waist and up her ribcage to her breast. With gentle hands, he cupped and kneaded her bosom, allowing his nimble thumbs to trace little circles around the most sensitive areas. When her chest had received ample attention, John let one hand trail under the bubbles to the waistband of the hotly contested panties. Lift your hips, sweetheart, he whispered next to her ear. Catherine complied without hesitation, mesmerized by the sensations evoked by John's skilled hands on her breast. When she was free from the last of her clothing, Catherine turned her head into John's neck and placed a kiss on his pulse point. John bent his head to capture her lips before sliding his hand past her stomach to cup her core. Easy, baby, he soothed softly against her lips when she jumped in shock. We'll go slow and easy. Overwhelmed by his intimate touch, Catherine held a hand over his to halt his progress. Patiently, John waited for her to relax before letting his lips find hers again. As their tongues tangled, he retraced the path to her breast and focused his attention there. Surprised when her hands began to feather light tracks up and down his legs, John decided to press his suit and slid his right hand to her stomach. Once there, he started to trace ever-widening circles up and down her midsection. When she didn't protest the attention, he slowly trailed his left hand down her torso and drew her left knee back and hooked it over his left leg. Gently, he began stroking the inside of her thigh. After completing his exploration of the left thigh, he pulled her right knee back and hooked it over his other leg. Adroit fingers danced along the tender flesh of her right thigh before seeking the spot designed to bring Catherine's fulfillment. When she cried out, "Johnny!" a few minutes later and arched against his hand, John smiled. His name had never sounded so sweet. Sex had always been a pleasurable pastime for John, but making love to his wife for the first time was a sublime experience he would never forget. His fear that she would be incapable of passion was replaced by wonder at the magnitude of her generous response to his ardent attentions. They were well matched in every way. Okay, that'll do. I didn't realize that was going to be so much like that. Hey, Tim. Yeah. Yeah, as Michelle said, that's wedding night. I picked a random spot. I told you, book 2, and from what Michelle has told me, book 2 is the more racy out of all of them. There's like 7, 8, 9, however many. So it's not too bad. It doesn't delve into erotica. So even if you know me personally, I think you can handle listening to me talk about this kind of stuff. Everyone does it. Okay, so that's about it. I'm going to get back to work on book 3. Again, you can message me, just do whatever. If you're interested in these books, let me know, and we'll get them to you. So thanks very much for watching. Next Thursday, 10 a.m., live music. And I actually have already been given an idea for the theme, and I think you'll like it. Take care.